My husband wanted to divorce me because I was not doing enough for him even though I was financially supporting him for years, so I gave him enough problems and ruined his life. Plus one update. My ex-husband was a problem. I didn't mind the myriad of health conditions he had, but the fact that he refused to take care of himself was the real issue. Especially when his problems caused me to lose the very little sleep I was going to get. I worked for a terrible corporate security firm that doesn't care about its employees. I was the single field supervisor in my region, and on top of my regular 40-hour work week, I was also called on emergency to fill open positions. The money was incredible, but I was miserably exhausted. At the time, my husband worked part-time, received SSI, and spent all his income on himself, video games and fast food, against his doctor's orders, while I paid both of our shares of the bills, car payment, insurance, phones, etc. This went on for about 3 years, progressively worsening as time passed. Despite the money I covered for him, I still managed to bump my credit by paying off my car and saving enough to buy a house. While moving, I was still working 80+ hours and couldn't spare time to help much, but I paid for the moving truck and dinner for anyone willing to help us pack up and move. I asked my then husband to make sure everything was packed. He packed all his belongings, then the household furniture, ignored whatever didn't fit, was late returning the moving truck, and I had to call about the fee. The result was that most of my stuff, my roommates, and my brother's stuff didn't fit in the moving truck. My brother made trips every day after work to pick up a carload and bring it home. I asked my ex-husband to please do the same, and he agreed. 3 weeks later, I finally got a day off. I worked a 12-hour shift and planned to pack up a few boxes and take them home while I was out. I walked into the house and saw that my ex had done nothing. He said he had been moving our stuff for 3 weeks and hadn't touched anything. I had a meltdown. My legs gave out from shock, and I sobbed on the stairs. My best friend also came in right after me and found me on the stairs. He held me while I cried and assured me he would take a few days off to get everything packed up and moved. He told me to go home and sleep, but I told him I was already here, so I might as well take a few boxes since my worthless husband lied to me about doing so. He helped me pack up some things, and I drove home. I didn't even bother to unload it. I went inside, collapsed on my bed, and cried. Hours and hours later, I finally woke up, a groggy mess, and made my way out to my car to start unloading. Best friend was there unloading his car with a tired smile. He had been going all day, and the sun was setting. Meanwhile, my husband was slacking off in the basement doing who knows what, breaking his promise. We managed to move everything, but I had to extend the lease by 1 week and pay a prorated rental cost due to my husband's neglect. I was quickly racking up anger at him, and finally, when we were moved, I sat him down and told him how angry I was about the lies, his laziness, and what he caused. He started accusing me of all kinds of things in return, like how I wouldn't passionately hug him because of his medical issues. I lost it. I screamed at him that I don't passionately hug anyone. I don't even passionately hug myself because I'm working the equivalent of 2 jobs with overtime to support his lazy butt and pay for his lifestyle because he wastes all of his money on fast food that he shouldn't even be eating in video games, and because he doesn't lift a single finger to do anything around the house like unpacking, cooking, cleaning, nothing to make my life easier. He is actively making my life harder. I'm still cleaning up after him when he leaves dishes everywhere and stains on my carpet, so no, I don't want to passionately hug him if he won't do anything to earn it. He went radio silent on me for 2 weeks. It got progressively worse. He wouldn't text me or speak to me, wouldn't answer my calls, and eventually wouldn't even look at me. Meanwhile, he's still living off my money. So, finally, one day, I messaged him to ask why he was treating me this way, and he ignored me. I asked several other questions, but nothing. Finally, I told him that if he hated me so much, he should just divorce me. He tells me the next day he wants a divorce. I ask him why. You're not going to believe his answer. You don't do enough for me. Oh boy, did he mess up. This ding-dong is the most obtuse, smooth-brained, intellectually deficient, situationally unaware, half-witted, opossum-brained clod, to say that. I unleashed it. I told him that I do everything for him. I pay for everything so he can live a relaxing life. I give him a roof over his head, food in his belly, and money in his bank account, and taking days off specifically to spend time with him, that I was doing everything for him, and this is the repayment I get. I got extremely quiet and bucked into his chest, pointing my finger at his face, and told him that since he wanted the divorce, he had to file, and if he even suggested forcing me to sell the house that I paid for, I would destroy him. I would hire an expensive lawyer, push him into the longest court battle of his life, and take him for every single penny he would ever earn for the rest of his life, along with court costs. Then I kicked him out. He moved out. He told me he was moving in with his family a few cities over and asked me to file. I filed in my county because it was closest. He raged at me when he found out. He wanted me to file online and pay an extra $270 out of my pocket, since he expected me to pay for the entire thing, and I told him no. A few days later, I got a strange text that didn't sound like him. I argued with him, then a confession was made. It was his girlfriend. He had lied to me again and moved to New York from Georgia. She went psycho on me and screamed at me via text about how abusive I was. Long story short, we argued, and I told her I wouldn't be speaking to her again. I'm filing in my county because I already started the process, and I'm not changing my mind because he lied. I might have been willing to file online if he hadn't lied, but I'm not now. Months go by, and finally, the date comes. She drove him to Georgia, and they were 15 minutes late. I knew this because I was 15 minutes early, and the clerk asked if I could contact him, so I went outside. I saw her roll up. I told him she was not allowed inside due to restrictions, but honestly, I wouldn't have let her inside because I hate her. He nodded, and up we went. We spoke to the clerk and started our paperwork. I have some legal knowledge, so I knew which questions to ask. I know how lazy this brat of a human is. He hates doing anything he doesn't have to do, so I reminded him before the clerk that he still had property at my home, and I wanted it out of my house. The clerk told him that anything he left on my property after a certain date would legally belong to me, and there would be no way of getting it back without my express consent. He asked if he could work something out with me, and I told him no, you'll have to adhere to these legal guidelines, and anything left afterward will be forfeited. Now, while we were together, his blessed mother passed. I loved that woman. She was a saint, and I wanted something of hers to remember her. He had inherited her dining rug. While not monetarily worth much, it is still a lovely black and red antique, and I knew he couldn't afford to ship it, nor could he afford to rent a moving truck, nor could he fit it in his girlfriend's tiny crap car. So, while he was crying and loading up his mother's belongings, all of which he had left behind when he left initially, I told him I was keeping the rug. I said this flatly and without feeling. He tried to argue, so I pointed out the obvious, and he conceded. He knew I was right. Update: I married my best friend, and we've been together for nearly 4 blissful years. On our 5th anniversary, he agreed to a ceremony since we were married in a simple ceremony with only 2 witnesses. For more petty revenge, I still have my ex's childhood art binder, which he cherishes, and I will continue to hold it until he pays me back the $400 he owes me for the brand new tires I put on his car, a mere few weeks before he decided he wanted the divorce. It's been over 4 years, man. I'm never giving it back at this rate. And I do send him annual reminders.
I went on my honeymoon without my new wife since she had to care for her sister. When I came back, she still refused to go home, so I'm checking out of this marriage. Plus all updates. I just got married. My wife, Tanya, basically raised her sister, Marie, after their mom passed away. Even after their dad remarried, Tanya and her sister were more mom/daughter than sisters. Marie got married last year and got pregnant right away, not before. They figure she got pregnant on their honeymoon. Marie went into premature labor at our wedding reception. She gave birth to a tiny but healthy baby girl. For some reason, Tanya decided she needed to take care of herself. We were supposed to leave for our honeymoon 2 days after our wedding, but Tanya said she couldn't just leave. She isn't a doctor or a nurse. Marie has a dad, a stepmom, a husband, a mother, and a father-in-law. I don't understand why she had to go. But we had non-refundable tickets, and insurance didn't cover. I have to stay and take care of my sister as part of the coverage. Plus I had booked 2 weeks off for my wedding and honeymoon. So, since I was going to be home alone, doing nothing while my wife was in another city doing whatever, I went on the honeymoon alone. I got a massive bed all to myself. I used all the resort credits for couples massages, romantic excursions, special meals on deep sea fishing, and a dune buggy tour of the island. I just got back, and my wife is still with her sister. But she is upset that I went on our honeymoons by myself. Was I supposed to let the money go to waste? Was I supposed to sit at home playing Diablo while I waited for her to be done? We are fighting about it. My friends all agree that I would have been dumb to waste the money and my time off. Her friends think I was a DCK to enjoy myself while she was taking care of her sister and a new baby. I will add that I needed somewhere to stay at Marie's house. Tanya sleeps in the nursery since the baby is still in the NICU. Update: the baby, Emily, is home and healthy. Just tiny. My sister-in-law kicked my wife out the day the baby came home. Tanya wouldn't let her do anything. Marie told her that she had plenty of help. Tanya said she didn't mind sticking around. Marie told her that she and her husband did have a problem with it. Marie also told all her relatives that if Tanya stayed with them, they would be allowed to stay when she left. Tanya asked if she would mind renting an Airbnb so she could stay nearby. I said I would prefer if she came home. We argued. I said we should not get married if this would be my life. Tanya came home to fight face to face. We had a fancy wedding and reception in Iowa for her family. We were going to get officially married in Colorado after we got back from the honeymoon. She wants to know why I'm having second thoughts. I said we are both young and can walk away without losing much. All the gifts are in her dad's garage, and they are easy to return. I said there was no way I would be the third wheel in our marriage. She has agreed to start going to counseling, and we are going to hold off on getting the paperwork settled for 1 year to give her a chance to decide what she wants. If she says that her sister comes first after 1 year, then I'm out. That's all. No more. The principal told me to instruct courses I was not trained to teach or look for another job, so I resigned and I created the biggest staff turnover in a decade. I've been teaching for 6 years, at my last school for 2 years. I have a BA in history and MA in education. My principal and administrative staff pulled me out of one of my classes during an intense lecture I was giving and ambushed me in the hallway to ask/tell me I was going to teach IB classes next year. For those unaware, International Baccalaureate courses are intense classes for high school students that last from 1 to 2 years. These classes are intense, requiring what some teachers have said to be the time equivalent of a part-time job for them to plan and prepare. Without additional pay and not part of my contract. For context, within the first 2 weeks of working at this school, I noticed the other side of the pendulum. The students with learning challenges were being pushed aside in order to achieve the principal's goals of becoming an elite IB school. I began advocating for these students and offered to teach a co-taught class with a special education teacher in order to help these students achieve. It was a great success, seeing many of the former troubled students actively being engaged in class, and through the grapevine, I was told I was one of their favorite teachers since I got them. After the first semester, I petitioned the staff to allow me to teach more of these specialized classes across my department. Here's the deal, the curriculum did not change, just how I presented it to the shared class. Anyhow, the principal shot down my idea but allowed me to continue with my lone class for the next year. Back to the present, I talked it over with my wife after the ambush. She is my rock, and she understood that I was troubled by the additional task of adding an additional 15 hours of work a week to my schedule. She said, "Go with your heart." The next week, I scheduled a meeting with the principal. I told him I was unprepared to teach the IB course this year, but if he would give me this year to prepare the additional materials and create a curriculum, I would be good to go for the next. I also asked if there were any other additional classes he would like for me to put together to teach next year. He said, "No, teach this course next year or look for another job." I asked about additional co-taught courses for the shared students who were overlooked. He said they were not important. I reminded him, yet again, that I was currently working toward my PhD in history, in order to teach college-level courses in high school, so students could get dual credit and a jump on college and tech schools. He laughed at me and said, I quote, "None of the additional education you have taken since you started working here benefits the school at all. No one cares." This took the wind out of me. I love teaching. All of the additional work, time and effort spent away from my family has been in order to be a better teacher and a better example for my students. I told him I would need to think about this, and quietly left the room. I took the next day off to spend time with my family and speak with my therapist. I am very lucky to have a wonderful support system. I went back to work after that, and there were a number of staff that spoke to me privately. They agreed what he said was shameful. They shared that I was not the only teacher he spoke to this way, from changing failing grades to passing to having teachers sponsor multiple extracurricular clubs, without pay. I went to my union rep and added my statement to his ever-growing pile of staff statements about the principal. I assured him I was willing to go to the school board, etc. Just give me a call. Yep, I decided I was done. I wrote the principal an outstanding resignation letter, full of positivity, and thanked him for the wonderful opportunity to work at his school and to have learned from his outstanding example of leadership. Did I also mention I forwarded the email to the entire staff? There was no way he could publicly respond negatively to my resignation, and he was furious. The majority of the staff knew what was going on. There were many smiles and fist bumps. Later, the office staff told me 5 other teachers had resigned, making this the biggest staff turnover in a decade. The principal now has to go before the school board next month to explain what is happening at his school. I wonder if I'm going to get a call.
My soon-to-be husband doesn't want me to keep my last name and change everything behind my back, so I told him that the only woman with his surname in the aisle will be his mommy. Plus all updates. Last December, my fiancé and I became engaged. The engagement itself was very unexpected and felt very sudden, as we had only been dating for 2 years. However, I accepted, as I love him, and I couldn't imagine a future without him in it. Since our engagement, we've had several wedding-related conversations and I've expressed to him numerous times that I would like to keep my maiden name, and not adopt his. The reason for this is that my parents never had any sons, and I am an only child. I want to carry on the family name for my parents, and I want my children to choose which last name they want to go by in both. I've expressed all of this to my fiancé, and he complied and reassured me that he was okay with my decision on the matter. As the wedding drew closer, I received a call from the cake planner last night regarding our cake, which we had met with him and designed a few weeks prior. He informed us that he had a sample prepared for us to come and see, so we drove there the next morning to sample it. Needless to say, I was a bit shocked when he pulled out the cake, which had the words Mr. and Mrs. Smith, my husband's last name, printed on top. Thinking it was an accident, though I had strictly told him just to write Mr. and Mrs. on the cake, I asked him to correct it for the final wedding cake for our wedding, which was in 2 weeks. He informed me that my fiancé had called him yesterday morning and had asked him to include Smith on top, along with the previous initials. On the car ride home, my fiancé informed me that he was not comfortable with me keeping my last name and that he had had a conversation with his mother 2 days prior, in which she informed him it was feminine, weak, and woke for him to comply to my wishes, and that he was signing himself up for an abusive marriage. Talking with the rest of the wedding planning staff, I found out he also instructed that the table centerpieces, official handouts, etc. all be changed to have Mrs. and Mr. Smith on them instead of our separate last names, with the help of his mother. After our argument, I informed him that I would call off the wedding if he did not comply with my wishes and that I didn't want his mother attending our wedding ceremony either way. He moved out and refuses to talk to me since. Ada? Update. Yesterday evening, I made the decision to text my fiancé and call off the wedding. I texted him the following message: "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that the wedding is off. Please inform your relatives or friends that the only Mrs. Smith they will find standing near the aisle will be your mom. I will mail back your ring to your mother's address, but please do not get in touch with me after this, or this woke WH will take your sorry SS to court." To which he responded with a long profession of his love, including several "I didn't mean it" as well as "it was an accident." I left this message on read and comfortably blocked his number. However, I didn't expect to receive a call from his mother an hour later, who ran her mouth at me over the phone and called me crazy bee and informed me that she was going to make my life a living hell for what I did to her son. I already made plans to change my lock and install a front porch camera, but should I be doing anything else to protect myself? I'm also receiving nasty messages from my ex-fiancé's friends, threatening me for my decision. I will plan to donate any or all food to a nearby homeless shelter, and I'd like to contact the baker and have the lettering changed to woke whore instead. I will also contact any of my own friends or family about the cancellation and give my best explanation, as well as canceling the venue, photographer, etc. My husband tore my heart to shreds when he cheated on me, so I brought up a clause in our prenup and screwed him over financially. My soon-to-be ex-husband and I have been together for 6 years and married for 4, though it feels more like we have only been married for 3. When we got married, we signed a prenup. One of the clauses stated that if either party cheated, they would forfeit their right to a substantial portion of our shared assets. At the time, my husband made more than me because I was still working on my master's degree. Fast forward to about a year ago, I found out that my husband had been having an affair with a colleague for almost a year because his AP messaged me and told me how my STD ex loved her, how I was a B for refusing to divorce him. I was devastated. After confronting him, he admitted to it, apologized profusely, and begged for another chance. But the trust was shattered, and I couldn't see a way to repair our marriage. As we started the divorce proceedings, I brought up the cheating clause in our prenup. My husband was shocked and tried to convince me to overlook it, saying that enforcing it would be vindictive and ruin his financial stability. However, the judge disagreed, ruling that the prenup will be followed because it is considered valid in our state. After the hearing got his family involved, who accused me of being cold-hearted and vengeful. They argued that people make mistakes and that I was using this as an opportunity to screw him over financially. Here's the thing, I worked hard for everything I have. After I got my master's degree and got my new job, I earned significantly more than him, and most of our assets came from my income and investments. The prenup was meant to protect us both, especially him, considering the disparity in our financial contributions, but now it protects me more than him. By enforcing the clause, he can lose considerable money and assets. I understand this will significantly impact his life, but I also feel that actions have consequences. Cheating is a serious betrayal, and the clause was there to protect me from exactly this situation. My friends are divided on the issue. Some say I'm justified in that he knew the risks when he cheated. Others think I'm being too harsh and that I should show some compassion, especially since he's already apologetic and remorseful. They know, with my savings, I could easily buy him out of the house and start over. My lawyer said this is what prenups are for, to protect pre-marriage and post-marriage assets. I feel bad because I know what he stands to lose, even though he tore my heart to shreds. My boyfriend put me down and made a joke out of me repeatedly during a party. Now he's crying because I am considering leaving him. Plus all updates. We had some friends and new people we were trying to get to know over, and at one point, I guess someone brought up favorite movies as an icebreaker. We all started giving top 3s while oohing and awing appropriately, as well as, "Oh, I haven't seen that one, what is it about?" and similar. Well, when it got to me, I listed them, and my boyfriend, who had been drinking, to be fair, started laughing and talking about how bad each of them was respectively. I tried to laugh along, but then he was like laughing at me and saying, "So you admit you have bad taste? You admit your taste sucks? Why do I ever let you pick movies again?" And like would not drop it. Someone had already tried to continue to their favorites, and he just circled it back like, "See how those movies are actually worth watching. I mean, what were you thinking?" Just laughed his head off again and again. It got ridiculous. Whenever I went to make popcorn, he side-eyed me and asked the group if they thought I could handle that alone. Not the last time he brought it up. He continued to randomly make fun of me throughout the night, no matter what we were talking about at that moment, and eventually, even the other people there started getting uncomfortable with the comments. I don't know if he didn't notice that or what, but I was so embarrassed that at one point, I had to excuse myself to the restroom to calm down. After they left, I asked him what that was about, and he just looked at me all confused. When I explained, he asked if I was really going to make a big deal about some jokes and rolled his eyes before going to bed. To give you context, because I know it seems like I'm freaking out over nothing, more than one of the people invited has reached out to me to ask if everything is okay and if he and I are fighting because his behavior was so uncharacteristically mean-spirited. I haven't responded yet because I'm so embarrassed and upset. Like, why would he act like that? Part of me feels like he was genuinely trying to joke, but alcohol made him overshoot into being a PP. Still, I'm done if we don't have a real conversation when he wakes up. Update: I woke up after finally falling asleep when he went to work and woke up the next morning to a couple of dozen messages from him and calls, all apologizing, all seeming pretty panicked, which was reason for alarm. I searched the house, but he wasn't home. I called him back to find him at his friend's house. I was still at his place, and many of his panic attack ramblings made it sound like he had 3 reasons for not returning to his place after his shift. He didn't want me to wake up with him there because he was scared it would make me uncomfortable. He needed someone to talk to and didn't want to wake me. He wasn't sure he could face what he thought was an inevitable breakup in that frame of mind. It was pretty clear that his anxiety had gotten a hold of him, and he wasn't handling it well at all, but by the time he got home, he was calm. I made us coffee, and we sat down and talked. His version of events was that when he started making the jokes, everyone laughed, and he thought I genuinely didn't mind. By the time everyone seemed uncomfortable with them, he was too far gone to notice. He did not remember our brief discussion after everyone left but didn't deny he said it. He basically said, "Yeah, I guess in the frame of mind I was in, that makes sense." He also apologized profusely and repeatedly. He looked close to tears the entire time, though he never actually cried and had difficulty keeping eye contact. I told him it upset me and that he knew my history and why I didn't want to be made into a joke by someone who was supposed to love me. He agreed vehemently and said he understood entirely, and all he wanted was a chance to apologize and make it up to me. I asked how he planned to do that, and he said he was going to stop drinking, period. On top of that, he was going to offer to sit down and watch all of the movies on my list with me since he hadn't seen 3 of the 4, but he understood if I didn't want to watch them with him. I explained the text messages, and he was horrified, and said he would reach out to everyone we invited and apologize personally. I was pretty satisfied at this point and just happy to call it a fluke, though I did express to him that I had considered leaving when he said what he said about it being a joke and that if it happened again, I could promise I wouldn't. We ended up watching 2 movies he hadn't seen, and the other 2 are also on the docket. He didn't love Creep 2, he liked the first one better but was pleasantly surprised by Bonnie and Clyde. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. If it became a pattern, I would leave, but one bad night isn't enough for me to throw away 3 years of friendship and 1 year of an amazing relationship.